health-related information on the following show provides general information only. Content presented on any show by any host or guest should not be substituted for a doctor's advice. Always consult your physician before beginning any new diet, exercise, or treatment program.
Welcome to Accelerated Health TV and radio show. I'm your host, Sara Banta. I'm a health coach, natural supplement expert, and a busy mom of three. Make sure you hit the subscribe button below so you're notified every week with my new podcast on Mondays and Tuesdays. And if you haven't already, join my free group coaching on Telegram with the link below. There is no downside. I teach you on a daily basis with tips and tools to enhance your health. You will be a part of a like-minded group to support you on your journey, in addition to truly taking control of your health. Everyone asks their questions, they support each other. It's just an amazing group. The protocols and supplements we discuss are all found at sarabantahealth.com. Today we are talking about iodine and fasting, and we have the fasting expert on, Ben Azadi. In 2008, he went through a personal health transformation of shedding 80 pounds of pure fat, and now he is the author of 4 best-selling books, including his latest, The Keto Flex. He has been the go-to source for intermittent fasting and the ketogenic diet since 2013. I think I have been following him since 2013. Now he is the host of a top 15 podcast, the Keto Kamp podcast, which I have been on, which also won Keto Podcast of the Year in 2022 by the Metabolic Health Summit. He has the fast-growing Keto Kamp YouTube channel with over 150,000 subscribers and TikTok channel with over 325,000 subscribers and over 46 million video downloads. That means this guy knows what he's talking about. Welcome, Ben. How are you today?
Sara, I am excited and grateful to be back with you. Thank you for the wonderful introduction and for bringing me back to your show.
I'm super excited. And what's so great about you is not just all of your knowledge and everything that you've gone through yourself, but you're just a really good person, Ben. And your energy is, everyone feels it. And that's why they follow you. And that's why they love soaking up everything you have. So I'm super grateful that we are having this conversation today. So to begin, why are we talking about iodine and fasting? Well, my goal is to enhance results by stacking the life hacks. And for anyone who heard my interview with Dr. Todd, who's been a speaker at Dave Asprey's Biohacking conference, he coined the term, the biohack is the stack, right? So we want to stack supplements, lifestyle, fasting, all of these things to get the most out of them. And that way, all of the hard work of fasting is going to get you better results. And so with that in mind, I want to touch on the benefits of fasting, that being weight loss and thyroid health, metabolism, cellular energy, ATP, autophagy, detox, liver health, inflammation, and then we'll go through how iodine helps with all of those things. So first, let's touch on weight loss, because that was your foot in the door with keto and intermittent fasting and these results. And then we'll go down your toxicity issues in a minute. But with weight loss, how did you see that keto and intermittent fasting or fasting really helped with your weight loss?
You know, what's interesting, Sara, with my weight loss journey is that when I first initially started to lose the weight, it was not with keto and fasting. This was back in 2008, where I thought it was all about eat less and move more. And that did work in the beginning, and that does work in the beginning, but over time, it does not work, and it fails for so many people. So I lost a whole bunch of weight, but I was still searching for what true health felt like and what it looked like, because yeah, I achieved 6-pack abs at that time, but I had digestive issues. I had brain fog. I didn't feel that great on the inside. So for years, I was exploring different nutritional avenues, or I was a vegan for a year and a half. And then, as you mentioned in the intro, in 2013, is where I started to search for other answers, because I wasn't getting the results I wanted. I started to gain some weight back. I was becoming really sore from workouts, taking me a long time to recover. I felt like my hormones were wonky. And then I did some lab work and it verified how I was feeling. So that's where I discovered keto and fasting. And that's where it just enhanced my results. When we think about ketosis and fasting, they are both ancient healing strategies, meaning they've been around forever since humans have existed. They're not new. They're just nuanced or new to some people. But these are tools that have been around forever since humans have existed. All of our ancestors practiced ketosis and they practiced fasting. And I know that because they had to go through famine. And through famine, it allowed their body to tap into body fat. And those ketones were produced and used by the brain. And fasting was part of that equation as well. So for me, when I started to implement fasting and keto, yes, the weight started to drop off and stay off, but also my brain turned on. My focus and mental clarity was incredible. I started to remember people's names. I became more creative and I performed better at the gym. Hormones felt better. So I started to look at it more of a view from looking at the body as a health instead of just fat loss or weight loss, because let's face it, there's a lot of people out there that are fit, not necessarily healthy. And I think we could do both. We want to be fit and healthy. So that's where it started about 10 years ago now. And there's a lot of things that I learned and unlearned and relearned, but I look at it as powerful ancient healing strategies to put your body in this healing state to harness the innate intelligence.
Yeah, absolutely. I feel like we all kind of went through this transformation of, okay, eat less, work out more. Okay, that works for a little bit, but why doesn't that work? And we'll talk about the fact that it slows down the metabolism, right? Your body says, oh, well, I'm only getting 1,200 calories today. I'm going to be like a bank account and I'm going to save those dollars or those calories and store them as fat. So for this famine that's coming up, and I am not going to expend them as quickly as I want. And then when you're fasting and more on a ketogenic diet, your body says, oh, I've got thousands of calories to burn. Let's ramp up the metabolism. Let's burn the fat, and we're going to be smart and actually maintain that muscle mass, right? Well, when you are talking about the weight loss, I'm just going to talk about the iodine real quick. Number one, the iodine is needed for your thyroid, right? So if you don't have enough iodine, which most people are suboptimal thyroid or hypothyroidism after the last 3 years, and we have to be very careful with how we're talking about this. You have to have the right iodine to feed the T4 and T3 to increase the thyroid health and to spur the weight loss. And it also helps with fat oxidation and the metabolism of fat so that you're actually being able to burn it. The other thing that it does is it increases ATP by 18 times. So when you're on a low calorie diet, but you're not focusing on lowering the carbs in the diet, you only have 2 ATP per cell or per mitochondria. When you incorporate the acceleradine iodine, you actually jump that to 36 ATP per mitochondria. So now, as you were talking about your mental brain fog, right? The iodine not only is helping with your thyroid and your metabolism and your fat oxidation, but it's helping your brain activity. It's known as the number one spiritual element because it detoxifies the pineal gland and it helps open up the brain. So just wanted to touch on that. Helps with the weight loss, helps with the thyroid health. And that is one of the main goals that people use fasting for is weight loss. So if you're using a low calorie diet like you were doing, you might lose weight for a little bit. If you do a vegan diet, you might lose weight for a little bit, but then your body gets smart and it says, I'm now cluing in. I'm going to slow down my metabolism. I'm going to get into survival mode, and I'm going to stop these pounds from leaving this body. So wanted to touch on that. So now here you are. You started intermittent fasting. You started doing keto. You're feeling better. But then you went through some sort of issue where you're like, I'm not where I want to be. Can you get into your story about detoxification and the toxicity that you were experiencing?
Absolutely. Yeah. So 2013, as I mentioned, is when I started keto, started fasting. At that time, I was the owner of a CrossFit gym here in Miami. So I was doing CrossFit, doing keto, doing fasting, and I felt a lot better as I transitioned to these ancient healing strategies. And then after a few years, those results started to slow down a little bit. And I was wondering, okay, maybe it's like a supplement I got to get. Maybe it's this product. And I started to order more supplements, and I didn't notice a change. So I was trying to figure out what was going on with me. I started to develop brain fog again. I started to develop fatigue in the afternoon. I just felt off. And fast forward now, 2018, I find out that a gentleman named Dr. Daniel Pampa was coming to my neck of the woods, Boca Raton, Florida, which is about an hour and a half north of me here in Miami. And I've been following his work for a few years, and I thought, okay, this is a cool time to see him in person. So I took a break from my CrossFit gym for the weekend, drove up to Boca, and that first lecture from Dr. Pampa, it was like he just took my head off of my body and shook it around and put it back on my body, and everything I thought that was true about health was the complete opposite. And one of the main things that I discovered is the dangers of silver amalgam fillings and how every single filling contains the super toxin mercury. About 55% of every filling contains mercury, and that mercury goes from organic mercury in that tooth, and it vaporizes as the person is drinking hot beverages, brushing their teeth, grinding, and it vaporizes, crosses the blood-brain barrier, and gets locked in the brain, the hypothalamus pituitary. And he's explaining this, going over all the research, going over his story, which was the story of mercury poisoning. And then I thought, whoa, I have 8 silver fillings in my mouth, and they've been in my mouth since I was a kid, 20 plus years.
Mm-hmm.
Could this be the reason why I feel so off? And that started a journey for me where I found a biological dentist. That's very important. I found the right dentist to perform safe amalgam removal. I had 2 appointments, got 4 removed on one meridian, and then another 4 removed on the other meridian. That was the first step. And the second step was, okay, now that the mercury is gone from my mouth, I need to get the mercury out of my brain. And that set me on the journey to learn how to detox the mercury out of my brain. But it wasn't until I started to actually go upstream and remove these heavy metals, then I started to feel incredible. And that was in 2018. I feel like my health is getting better and I'm feeling better year after year. And then just on top of that, I discovered at the same time back in 2018 that the house I lived in had black mold too. So I was being hit with mercury. I was being hit with nasty black mold. So I had to detox. Well, I had to get out of the house. First of all, I sold the house, but I had to detox the mold and the mercury, and I'm still going through it. You know this, Sarah. We're always retoxing. We live in a very toxic world. So detox is not a thing you do once and you're done. Something that's a continuous basis, unless you're living in the middle of the woods, because we're going to be faced with toxins no matter pretty much where we go. So that's, so important. So to a lot of people who are eating clean, they're doing intermittent fasting, and we love keto. We love fasting. Those are great tools. But if you're not getting the results you want and you're doing all those things, you got to explore a toxicity issue.
Yeah, so much to say there. And I'll tell you that when I was on my health journey, I was tested for heavy metals because not only do mercury and lead create brain fog and all of these other issues that you mentioned, they make you crazy. There's a thing known as lead toxicity making you crazy and people becoming really out of whack. So
Mad Hatter's disease.
Yes. So I got tested, and my levels of mercury, lead, and aluminum were off the charts. I live under a flight path for the airport. And so I've got jet fuel just dropping over me. And even when I was in my childhood home, I lived under that same jet path. So for the last 47 years, minus the 4 or 5 years I was in college, I have been living under the jet path. So I have had to detox from severe metal toxicity, but then you add in the radiation, the smart meters, the Zooms, the smartphones. Do you realize, Ben, it's so crazy to think that 20 years ago, smartphones weren't here. And now they're just part of our appendage, right? They are literally a part of our arm. And that radiation is so toxic and no one thinks about it because it doesn't look like anything. But with these heavy metals, it can slow down your thyroid. The thing that people don't realize is mercury is particularly toxic to the thyroid. Lead, mercury, all of these heavy metals have a positive charge. So where does iodine come in? The acceleridine has a negative charge. So when you talk about negative and positive, they attract, they combine, it binds them together and then takes them out of the body. And so it helps remove them much quicker. And then when you're fasting, and I'd love for you to go into how fasting on its own helps clean up and helps detox the body.
Yeah, and you're exactly right about the mercury. It has an affinity for the thyroid, and the mercury is like the canary in the coal mine, right? Back in the day, they used to use canaries in the coal mines, and if these canaries started to drop dead, they know there's a gas leak. Get out of that coal mine, because they didn't have the technology to detect the gas leak. And the thyroid is kind of like that canary. It's very sensitive. First symptoms start to manifest, and unfortunately, you know this, Sarah, most doctors miss it because they're looking at TSH, and that has really nothing to do with thyroid health. It's just showing you the communication. They're not running full panels because their treatment is the same. So why would they do any extensive testing? So there's estimated 20 million people walking around with thyroid conditions. And they have no idea. And a big part is, of course, the imbalance with the iodine, as you mentioned, and also mercury eating up the thyroid. So with fasting, fasting checks the box on pretty much every health benefit we're seeking. I call it nature's reset button. It's one of the best ways to tap into the innate intelligence, the inner physician that God has put inside of our body. There's nothing external that we need to heal. It's really internal. It's our job to remove the interference. And with fasting, what an amazing way to remove the interference. When you eat food, it takes a lot of energy and blood flow and resources to digest food, from the healthiest meal to fast food, from a snack to a full-on meal. It's taking a lot of energy. So when you remove that from the equation and you're in a fasted state, now you have all this energy being diverted towards healing. The innate intelligence, the doctor within your body could go to work. So in terms of what it does for like cellular health and cellular detox, the innate intelligence thinks, whoa, 17 hours into a fast. That means we're going through a famine. The body doesn't know about Uber Eats or DoorDash or the supermarket. Automatically goes into this old school wiring, kicks in, where it thinks it's going through a famine. So it raises these hormones called counter-regulatory hormones that run counter to insulin, glucagon, noradrenaline, cortisol. The sympathetic tone is activated. So it's pumping the body full of energy, helping the brain stay alert by helping the brain produce brain-derived neurotropic factor. And it's doing all of this because it wants you to stay awake, energized, and alert so you could go out there, hunt and kill, and stay alive. Again, it doesn't know that we could eat food whenever we want. We're blessed to do that here in America. So we could use that energy just to feel good. And then it goes a step further. It starts to look for cells that are not functioning well, cells that are senescent cells. They're called zombie cells that, they're just kind of sticking around, but they're not giving you any benefit. And they're kind of recruiting other senescent cells. They're really bad for the environment. They're bad for the neighborhood. So the body looks for these cells and it says, okay, first let's try to repair the cell. Let's try to repair the mitochondrial membrane. Let's try to repair some of the processes within these broken cells. And if it determines that this cell is completely dysfunctional, there's no way we could fix it, then it goes a step farther and it signals apoptosis, which is programmed cell death. And then it goes a step farther. After it gets rid of a cell, it creates a new stem cell. And that stem cell could be used for your liver, for your heart, for your kidney. The innate intelligence will determine where it would use that new stem cell. And all of this is happening without you having to think about it, without you having to spend any money because you're fasted, and you're actually saving money because you're not spending money on food. So fasting, it checks the box on so many health benefits that we're seeking. It's one of my favorite ways to harness the innate intelligence.
I love that you pointed out the fact that not only does it not cost anything, but it actually saves you money. And that's what I love telling my clients when they say, well, if I do your cleanse or, I don't have the money for it. I'm like, you're actually going to save money because you're not going to be buying the muffin with your Starbucks anymore, which have you been adding up those dollars that you're spending at the vending machine or when you go out to breakfast now you don't need to eat breakfast. When you really fine tune your diet, because you're intermittent fasting, then you're very specific on what you're eating, you
That's
actually
right.
save a lot of money.
I did the math, by the way. I did the math on that because you're right. And I like to give people like the number. And I did the math. If somebody spent, let's say, $15 on breakfast only Monday through Friday, not on the weekends, Monday through Friday, they spend $15 on breakfast. After a year, they would have saved $3,900. And if they spend 15 minutes getting the breakfast, they get back 5.4 days back in a year. It's like time and money.
It's amazing. And let's just talk about the fact that you feel so good. The brain is on fire. I mean, I always do my podcast fasted. I've never eaten before because my brain is on fire. And it's just that's where you feel good. And then if you think about it, our ancestors, if they didn't kill their hunt the first day, they better have better energy and better mental focus the second day. So that's where the innate intelligence of the body is like, okay, we got to fine tune it and we've got to maintain our muscle mass because we've got to have those quads and the legs and the arms to be able to run from the tiger and shoot the animal that we're wanting and get our kill. So the body is working for you for survival. You have to always think about what is the goal of your body, survival number one. And when you talked about apoptosis, so I just had this conversation with a young client of mine in her 20s, thinking about possibly getting pregnant in the next couple of years, right? And prepping her body for it. Well, apoptosis, as you mentioned, is this destruction of diseased or damaged cells, but it also is the growth of new cells, and it happens at the most when in a pregnant woman, when the fetus is growing, right? Because there's a whole bunch of apoptosis going to create this human being. And then during puberty, that apoptosis is really active because the teenagers are now changing with their hormones. They're growing, they're developing in different ways. So what supplement increases apoptosis more than any other supplement? Iodine. So it triggers that apoptosis. And another side note on apoptosis that I have to be careful with how I say this is that over the last 3 years, we have seen that the spike protein has actually stopped apoptosis. So what does that mean to your health? Well, if you had some chronic disease and it was maybe in remission or put at bay for a while, and now all of a sudden it's back with a vengeance, there might be this case where the apoptosis is not happening because of what's been going on over the last 3 years. So this is another way where fasting, incorporating the iodine, will actually circumvent that and trigger apoptosis in a healthy manner. So this is something really important to get across because we have to be super careful with how we say it. So I wanted to just mention that, and reduction of inflammation. Let's talk about inflammation. I mean, as you know, inflammation is literally the source of all disease, right? If you find inflammation in the body, then you're going to find disease. So can you touch on the benefits of fasting with inflammation?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, the opposite of fasting is eating, and eating frequently. And a colleague of mine, his name is Dr. Don Klum, he did a patient population study where he had hundreds of his patients not remember everything they ate, because that's kind of hard to do, people to recall what they've eaten. I don't like those studies, but he had them write down anytime they ate something, meaning the definition of that would be any time they spike glucose and insulin. So it could have been some almonds they snacked on. It could have been a full-on meal. It could have been a protein shake, but he had them write down every time they ate something. And the average person was eating 17 to 23 times per day. So I've been saying the average American eats about 17 to 23 times per day. That is inflammation. You're never allowing your digestive system to take a break. You're overwhelming it. And I always talk about the analogy of a corporate worker that I call Sandra. And Sandra works 9 to 5. And let's say Sandra just worked 8 hours, 5 p.m. She's walking to her car. She's exhausted. She put in 8 hours of work. She's about to get into her car to drive home and relax and rest. And she gets a phone call from her boss saying, Sandra, we need you to come back in. A new project just came in. We need you to go back into the office and work on the project. So she does. She works on the project for 5 more hours. It's now 10 p.m. She's so exhausted. Going to her car, she gets the same phone call. Sandra, new project came in. We need you to come back to the office for another 5 hours. So if this happened to Sandra over and over and over again, she would be exhausted. We would wear her out. And this is exactly what we're doing to our digestive system when we do not practice fasting. It takes a lot of energy and resources, as I mentioned, to process a meal. And you're going to have a glucose and insulin spike. That's going to be inflammatory. So with fasting, you're not getting those glucose and insulin spikes. So it's keeping your insulin levels nice and steady. It's allowing your glucose levels to drop. And for a lot of people who do low carb keto with fasting, you get the production of ketones. And we know ketones are incredible signaling molecules that communicate with the mitochondria to produce more mitochondrial biogenesis. It also helps with inflammation. So that 1-2 punch of ketosis and fasting is really, really good for inflammation. And you're going to notice that because you're going to notice better digestive function, less acid reflux, less puffiness, less bloating. You're going to notice your joints and your ankles are less achy. You're going to notice your brain is getting turned on and you're more focused. You're going to notice a lot of cool things. And all of that is a result of your body lowering cell inflammation, which, to your point, Sara, is the key for anti-aging and longevity.
But Ben, I thought you need food for energy, right? So
yeah,
shouldn't we wake up and eat? I mean, what I was so interested in is I just had Dr. Rick Johnson on, and we were talking about uric acid and processed food and fructose. And, I'm a mom of 3, so I've got to make things make sense to my kids, not just my clients who want to, are suffering from chronic disease, but I've got to make it make sense to my kids. And what he was saying is that fructose not only doesn't give you energy or ATP, right? The goal is ATP because that's true cellular energy. But fructose and processed foods actually steal away ATP. So not only is it not giving you energy, it's stealing energy from you. And these processed foods and carbohydrates, the grains, and even the gluten-free breads are anti-nutrients. They're stealing away the nutrients from your body, causing leaky gut, so that when you actually eat the healthy proteins and healthy fats, they're not getting absorbed very well because of the one bad meal. Now, should you not have a cheat meal once in a while? I'm not saying that, but do know that there is going to be a retractory period where your body's got to heal. And that's where fasting comes in. That's where, it speeds up the healing and that turnover, and then, taking the right gut supplements if you need that, and focusing on the proper diet to help heal the gut and give the body the nutrients. The cellular energy, I know you've talked about it a lot as far as the health of the cell and the inflammation of the cell. I call it the phase angle, and the ability for the toxins to get out of the cells and the nutrients to get in the cells. Because if we take in the nutrients, but they're not getting in the cell, it doesn't do you any good, right? So why don't you touch on what that means? What does it mean, that phase angle or the integrity of the cell walls?
Yeah, it's such an important question, and you nailed it, right? That's the phase angle. It's the integrity of that membrane. And when we think about, I mentioned the intelligence within the body. I used to ask the question, okay, where is the intelligence? Is it our DNA? Is it the mitochondria? Is it something else? And I know for many years, scientists believe that our intelligence was the DNA. And that premise is kind of sucks, because if you have bad DNA and bad genes, then you're pretty much, your destiny is determined by your genetics. And I don't like that, because that means if you have cancer in your family, it's just bad luck. And that premise was challenged by Dr. Bruce Lipton many years ago, where he said, all right, if that is their premise, the DNA is the intelligence, let's look at cells and let's remove the DNA and observe what happens next in the cells. And he did that. Dr. Bruce Lipton did that. And he noticed that the cells went on to live and function just fine for months, even though the DNA nucleus was removed, proving that it is not your genes that determine your destiny. Something else communicates with your DNA. So then he wanted to find out, all right, what is it then? So he would remove that cell membrane, and it would be instant death every time. Cell membrane was removed, instant death, which went on to show him and me that the membrane is where the intelligence is. Life begins and life ends in that cell membrane. So when we think about the human body, depending on the size of the human being, 50 to 70 to 100 trillion cells, every cell has that lipid bilayer, that protective layer made out of fat, cholesterol, saturated fat, and protein, which has these integral membrane proteins, these receptor sites integrated into them. And that's where all the hormones, all the nutrients, your oxygen, your thoughts attach to get into the cell. And then it communicates with your DNA to turn on good genes or turn on bad genes. But it has to do with the environmental stimulus, the food you eat, the thoughts you think, the lifestyle habits you have. If it's a negative or an inflammatory environmental stimulus, then the DNA produces inflammatory proteins. But if it's an anti-inflammatory food, nutrient, thought, like a loving, a grateful thought, then the DNA produces anti-inflammatory protein, which is super cool. So you said, Sarah, that that's the phase angle, which is true. Good things need to get in and bad things need to get out. Every time the cell produces energy, it creates free radicals, reactive oxygen species, cellular smoke, toxins, and that needs to get out of the cell. If there's too much cell membrane inflammation, good things will not get in efficiently. Bad things cannot get out. And that's where you get this buildup of toxins. These cells turn into senescent cells, and the body starts duplicating these senescent cells, and they just stay there, creating inflammation and disease if you don't deal with it. So that's what was happening to me. I had so much cell inflammation because of the toxins that it didn't matter how much I exercised or how much I fasted or how much keto I did. It wasn't until I had to go upstream and remove the toxins that were causing that membrane inflammation, then things were allowed to get in efficiently and the free radicals were allowed to be removed efficiently.
Yeah, and what you have to also realize is that these toxins that we're talking about, the mercury, the lead, the halogens, the bromide, fluoride, chlorine. So the cell, if it's not saturated with iodine, it's something called, let's go back to chemistry class, displacement. So if you need, every 100 trillion cells in the body needs iodine and has receptor sites for iodine, not just the thyroid. But if you don't have enough in there, then these nice little toxins like bromide and fluoride or mercury go into the receptor site. But if you are saturated with enough iodine, then it bounces off the toxins, and then the toxins then have to go through the blood and the liver to get expelled out of the body. Now, that also, we're going to get onto the liver in a minute, but that the iodine is also anti-inflammatory. So in two separate ways, it's working to detox the cells. It's pushing out the cells or the toxins out of the cells, keeping the new toxins from getting into the cells. And then you want to make sure, and I know, Ben, you're a proponent of electrolytes and making sure you have your salts and your good salts, not just the stripped sodium table salt, but salts like the accelerated ancient salt or other salts that actually plump up the volume of the cells and the blood to expel the toxins even more effectively out of the body. But that displacement theory is really important for everyone to understand, that if you don't have enough of the good stuff, the bad stuff's going to fit in. It's just kind of like when you don't have the good food in your refrigerator, you're going to reach for the donuts and the ice cream because it's there, right? So we want to crowd out the toxins with the good stuff, and that's going to keep the other stuff from being able to come in, while also reducing the inflammation in each cell and giving those cells great energy to pump out the bad stuff and the good nutrients to come in. Now that leads us to liver health, because you gotta love your liver when you're detoxing, right? You can do all of these detox protocols and supplements and eat supposedly clean, healthy foods, but if your liver's backed up, there's nowhere for things to go through. And then you've got this buildup of the xenoestrogens. Estrogen dominance is hitting men and women at an earlier age. I know most men in their 20s have, 50% of the testosterone that they used to have just a little bit ago. So this is affecting everybody. You don't have to just be in your 40s, 50s, and 60s to be sitting there going, what's going on with my body right now? The liver is where it's at. So let's talk about liver health and fasting and what the importance of the liver is.
Yeah, you nailed it. The liver, we want to love the liver. I call the liver the soccer mom organ because it does everything for us like a soccer mom. It's especially in the keto space, which is my space. It's responsible for producing bile to break down fat. And one of the most common reasons why somebody switches to a higher fat, low carb diet and they feel awful, they have digestive issues, is because their liver is so dysfunctional and sluggish from years of abuse that it can't produce healthy bile to break down the fat. And then on top of that, it has all the other rules for detoxification. So we know that we live in a world that's very toxic, not just for the body, but especially the liver, and it can't keep up with this toxic load. And when we consume processed foods and drink a whole bunch of alcohol and have all these toxins and eat a whole bunch of carbohydrates, the liver is going to tend to be sluggish and it's not going to keep up with the load that we're putting on it. So we want to make sure, number one, we're supporting the liver by eating bitters. Very easy thing to do. Me and Sara both agree that bitters are going to support the liver. Some of my favorite are going to be apple cider vinegar, arugula, ginger, milk thistle tea, even organic coffee could act as a bitter stimulant. Smelling herbs like rosemary and thyme and basil can actually help with bile production and liver health as well. Those are some easy downstream tips for the liver. Some people really need to go and do more advanced tips for the liver, and that's going to be things like coffee enemas. We utilize something called a phosphatidylcholine push, where we take a big tablespoon of PC oil from Body Bio, I believe they're called, and we take a binder 45 minutes beforehand. So the binder sits in the gut. The PC oil forces the liver to dump bile, and then it collects those toxins, so it helps to recycle healthier bile back to the liver. And coffee enemas, as I mentioned, castor oil pack, very easy thing to do. And fasting is also great because when you fast, especially when you do fasting consistently and do some longer fast, your body, your innate intelligence is going to start to pull some fat from the liver. And a lot of people have fatty liver, non-alcoholic fatty liver disease. And you could always test like your liver enzymes, your ALT, your GGT, your AST to kind of see where it's trending. And I've seen a lot of lab work, and a lot of people have higher enzymes, signaling that they might have fatty liver or they're on their way to fatty liver. So with keto, with taking some of the bitters, taking the PC oil, and with fasting, it's a great way to support the liver. And I'm sure you're going to add some more strategies to that. But the liver is key. So important. When you detox the liver properly and you support it, it's going to help with weight loss. It's going to help with energy. You're just going to feel better overall.
I have to tell you, I put my clients through a liver flush, and I've been incorporating it once a month. And the change in me, it's like the bloat is gone. So if you have any gut issues or pains or swelling or feel bloated, or you feel something stuck up under your liver, that liver flush just helps get rid of all of it, and there's no guessing, and your energy shoots through the roof. Why does the energy shoot through the roof? Because your thyroid hormones convert from T4 to T3 in the liver. So if you have a backed up liver and your liver is just focusing on just trying to get through the day with the toxins, it's not going to convert T4 to T3. It's going to actually maybe even turn it into reverse T3 for a survival mechanism to slow down the metabolism. The other thing that we're finding is that the spike protein has compromised the ACE2 receptor in the liver, and all of these actions happen in the liver. So what is that controlling? Apoptosis. So I mentioned that's being compromised, but it causes water retention. It causes a slowing metabolism, unexplained weight gain, fat and protein malabsorption. So maybe you're sitting there going, gosh, I used to eat this healthy grass-fed ribeye steak and I put butter on it, and now I get really nauseous when I eat it. Well, your body's fat metabolism might be compromised compared to what it was 3 years ago, right? So that liver flush and cleansing the liver will help boost your fat and your protein metabolism. Now, you want to stay away from the chicken and the poultry because those have amyloid proteins. And why is that a problem? Well, the spike protein actually causes more amyloids built up in the body, and the amyloids are not being broken down and used for usable amino acids in your muscles and your brain, and they get deposited in your brain for Alzheimer's and dementia issues. But they also wreak havoc on your gut, and they allow the gut pathogens like E. coli and Salmonella to wreak their head or to surface and overtake the good bacteria. So something as simple as that, where people are thinking, I'm doing all the right things, I'm intermittent fasting, I'm on a low carb ketogenic diet, I have a chicken salad every day with an olive oil dressing, but that chicken could be the problem that you don't know that is wreaking the havoc. So these are things where you don't necessarily have to do all of it, but if you're not getting the results you want, these are a few things to take a look at. So we've talked about the unexplained weight gain, and that can be from the liver. I can see it in a lot of people where they're doing all the right things. They just haven't done the liver flush or taken care of their liver. And boom, it's like that was the answer. And then it sparks that, it revs up the thyroid health. It, of course, helps your brain. And we've talked to Ben about the mental and the emotional aspect of health, right? Well, the liver also holds your anger and your frustration. So when you cleanse the liver, you're going to feel this nice, relaxation and a letting go of these old emotions. But before we go, I want to make sure we talk about the emotional part of health and how it could be the roadblock. So here you are thinking you're doing all the right things, but you're not getting results. Have you seen the mental health, the emotional health being the wall that is keeping people on a plateau?
Absolutely. It happens more than people would think. I believe that it's 95% of the equation, the mental game that I call the mental six pack. Because if you think about it, we mentioned earlier about the phase angle and the cell membrane, and we established how important it is to have healthy cell membranes, not just cell membranes, but also mitochondrial membranes as well. And thoughts are a part of that equation. Thoughts do have the ability to penetrate the cell membrane, these frequencies that we have that we call thoughts. They penetrate the cell membrane. They actually have the ability to communicate with your DNA nucleus to turn on proteins, good or bad. And that's work from Dr. Bruce Lipton. He's proven that. So if that is true, and the average person has 60,000 thoughts per day, which is what they determine, studies determine 60,000 thoughts per day on average. And 90% of those thoughts that we have are usually the same thoughts from the day before. And 85% of those thoughts are negative thoughts, thinking. That means we have 60,000 opportunities every day to put the body in an anti-inflammatory healing state. And I don't know of any other biohack that's as potent and as frequent as that. So yes, Sara, it is everything. Being in a state of gratitude, what you appreciate appreciates and expands. Too many people I've seen eat perfectly, take all the supplements, but they have stinking thinking and they're have inflammatory thoughts. And if you have 60,000 thoughts per day, it doesn't matter how clean you eat. If your thoughts aren't clean too, it's going to be almost impossible to get the health results that you seek. So yes, it's a very important part of the equation, and it's part of my life, something I work on every day. It's something that I teach my students too.
So something that I've done, and as a mom, because you have this weight on your shoulders to make sure that your kids are focusing on the positive and the gratitude, like you're talking about, Ben, I start my day out and I write in our family group text to everybody of what I'm grateful for. And it reminds them, okay, so mom's thinking this way. What am I grateful for? And then I ask them, does anyone else want to add in? And it's amazing how the energy within the family and the day just turns around. Yesterday started out with a pretty rough day. I'm not going to lie. I did this. And by the end of the day, I was on cloud nine. My energy was amazing. I hadn't eaten anything different or done anything different. It was all about gratitude. And my physical body felt better. So I love that you promote that. It's huge. And it is such a big part of the equation. So before we go, I want to just touch on copper, because iodine and copper, as far as what's been going on in the last couple of years, the insulin resistance, the high uric acid, the fructose from the standard American diet deplete copper out of the body. Guess what else does? The spike protein. So we have both of those things killing our copper. And this might be the hidden reason that you're not able to lose weight while you're intermittent fasting and eating everything that Ben and I are promoting, because copper has to be in the body to metabolize fat. And it also has multiple other ways it inhibits fat storage and helps with insulin resistance and uric acid. So just wanted to mention those two things. If anyone is on a plateau, it's the iodine and the accelerated scalar copper are the two things that might be what will enhance your results and get you off that plateau. So before we go, Ben, tell everybody about your detox program that's coming up and where else they can find you.
Thank you, Sara. I think this is the third time I've been on your podcast, right?
Yes.
Which is super cool. You've been on mine 3 times too. The third episode or the third interview is coming out very soon, which is so Keto Kamp podcast is my podcast, Camp with a K. I'd love for your audience to go check it out. Sara's her third interview with me will come out very soon. I think next week, actually. Awesome. I have a detox program coming up on July 18th. I do this twice a year. This is the second time this year. I take a small group of people through a 90-day heavy metals detox journey. And you can learn more about that over at ketokampdetox.com. At the time of me saying this, I have 6 spots left for it because I want to keep it small. We don't really bring in a lot of people just because I want to make sure I have enough time on the calls to answer all the questions. So I'm going to share exactly what I did to detox the mercury out of my brain for those who feel like they have a high toxic load. It's probably for you. So it's ketokampdetox.com. And my website is benazadi.com.
And if you're questioning whether you have heavy metals in your body, the answer is yes. I don't know very many people that wouldn't. And just like you said, unless you live under a rock in Antarctica or somewhere like that, my levels were through the roof. And it's super important because that could be the hidden problem as well, as far as why you just aren't feeling good. And then they're the triggers for all of the other diseases that are downstream. So, right. Ben, it is such a pleasure being with you. Your heart and your mind are unmatched. And I've been following you forever. I love your content. And you truly are just out there to help everybody. So, thank you, thank you, thank you. And thank you everybody else for joining us today. If I can help you, contact me directly through the website, sarabantahealth.com. You can also leave a comment below. Have you been struggling with your fasting? Have you tried fasting? What did you learn from Ben today? Join the free group coaching on Telegram with the link below. I teach you on a daily basis, and the feel good emotions and motivation that happens in that group is just unmatched. You truly get to take control of your health. The protocols and the supplements we discussed are all found at sarabantahealth.com. You can follow me on Facebook and Instagram under Accelerated Health Products and across over 100 channels under Accelerated Health TV and radio show. If you like what you hear today, please share with your friends and family and hit subscribe, and join us every Mondays at 2 p.m. and Tuesdays at 1 p.m. Pacific. You can use coupon WELCOME10 for 10% off site-wide. Thanks again for joining us, and have a great week.